Hello, my name is Levi Moore, and welcome to Community Pulse, a public affairs show about public health in the city of Chicago. Today, our guest is Illinois State Representative of the 14th District, Kelly Cassidy. Welcome to Community Pulse.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Okay. First, let me take care of some housekeeping. Okay. Community Pulse is sponsored by the Hectone Institute of Medicine, an 80-plus-year-old institution that is involved in medical research, managing medical research grants and public health care delivery grants. My title is Foxglove Alliance Coordinator, and I work for Hectone. Hectone actually sponsors Foxglove. Community Pulse is a partnership between the Healthcare Council of Chicago and Hectone's Nurses and Humanities, and they also represent the other rotating co-hosts for this show. So with the housekeeping done, time to get started. So I always like to start with just try to humanize the person we're going to talk to. So Representative, tell us something about yourself, not political, but maybe, who are you, where you're from, how you entered public service.
I grew up on a little island on the west coast of Florida, which was really sort of a working class fishing village community. I moved here in the early 90s and started doing political activism work through the National Organization for Women and various LGBTQ organizations at the time. And my work sort of took me through some of those spaces, brought me into government in roles working for various elected officials before I sought the appointment to the 14th District when then Alderman Harry Osterman, or he was the representative, became the alderman in the 48th Ward, and I was appointed to fill his vacancy, and I've been reelected ever since. I've been in office for 13 years.
Okay, now I'm a little bit biased because I think you have the best district in the entire state of Illinois.
100%, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise.
And it's because I live there. So, but tell us about the 14th. Where is it? Just parameters. What's it like?
Absolutely. So the 14th District is comprised of the Chicago neighborhoods of Edgewater, Andersonville, and Rogers Park, with a little bit of West Ridge thrown in for good measure. Yeah. It is the physically smallest district in the state because we are the tallest. Every single district has about the same number of people, roughly 108,000 people, with minimal variation. But because we are so dense, because we have so many high rises, we have the smallest footprint in the state.
Oh, well, I did not know that. Okay, that's great.
We're also probably the most progressive district in the state, which makes it really fun to represent.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Now, let's talk about the recently concluded General Assembly session, the budget session. Overall, every session sort of has a theme, a flavor, a vibe as you're going in. Yeah. And what was it like this time? And it's something interesting I didn't realize until a few months ago. About 1/3 of the state reps currently in the General Assembly did not work with Mike Madigan.
Right.
It's just that much change that fast.
Absolutely.
So so tell us the overall vibe going in.
So similarly, a very large proportion of the chamber, both caucuses, have never had a hard budget.
Oh.
So these last few years where we've had federal money flowing, where we've had, really good tax receipts, because during the pandemic, nobody was spending money on services which aren't taxed. They were spending money on items which do get taxed. Our revenues were higher. So this was really the first budget year where people had to make some tough choices, and it showed. There was a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and some heated words.
There were some elbows.
Yeah, there were definitely some shots fired for sure. So that was different. To see folks who, honestly, for me, these last few years where we've had the resources to do what we needed, there were other pressures, right? The job was hard. The things that we needed to accomplish were hard because of the pandemic, because of the economy. But I was more used to the hard budget years where we were making cut decisions, where we were, having to triage, what are we going to invest in this year? But there were a lot of members who had trouble wrapping their head around that, who were, who balked at what really is a fairly low impact revenue bill. I wonder what's going to happen when we really have to take a big revenue vote.
Well, it's the whole thing like, it's really hard to take something away that people have.
Absolutely.
And they probably got used to, okay, well, what we're doing is so great. Of course, we're going to keep all this, and like, the money's not there.
And when you can't, right? And so that was challenging and frustrating. And like I said, I think that we have real revenue votes coming down the pike towards us. And seeing folks who wanted to vote for the budget and not vote for revenue, like I hope that cake was delicious because you really can't have it and eat it too. Things are going to get tougher.
Yeah. Let's talk, because community health is about public health.
Yeah.
What were some big things regarding public health in this session that were passed?
So we did a good deal around, and we've continued to do a good deal around our work in terms of accessing reproductive and gender affirming care. So, making sure that those investments are there, making sure that those policies are in place to protect those providers. We've gone to great lengths to try to improve access, in particular in places where we might have healthcare deserts, but you've always got a Walgreens, right? So we've taken more steps to expand access to care via pharmacies. We a couple of years ago did birth control over the counter, which is in the implementation phase. We did access to PEP and PrEP via pharmacy. This year we added the.
Can you go in a little bit more?
Oh yeah, sure. PEP and PrEP, absolutely. That's a little jargony for folks. PEP and PrEP refer to pre-exposure prevention and post-exposure prevention for HIV.
Okay.
And it's a medication that can prevent you converting into HIV positive status. So we took steps. That was 2 years ago to pass that. This year we added the capacity to provide some basic healthcare testing and prescription of treatments for flu and lice and some of the things that is it really worth a full trip to the doctor, especially when you got to go halfway across town. Maybe you don't have a doctor, maybe you can't afford it. So making sure that people have access to some really basic healthcare through what's available to them in their community has been a priority for us. And then I had a bill that didn't make it through that I'm really excited to get through in the fall, which is part of our statewide strategy to get to zero new HIV infections that would increase access to testing, speed access to treatment once you've been tested, ensure that information about testing and treatment is available in the places where the most vulnerable folks are.
Yeah, I just read this morning that I don't know how close it is to being rolled out, but there's a medication you can take twice a year, they think, that would be a protection, which would be
the injectable PEP and PrEP.
Which
Absolutely,
would be a game changer.
100%. In particular, because the current treatment modality for PEP and PrEP is a pill, and you have to be tested again for STDs and HIV infection before you can renew your prescription. So it's a laborious commitment for somebody to take this medication, as important and life-saving as it is. So anything we can do to make those modalities more accessible to people, twice a year, you don't have to remember, you don't have to, it's sort of the equivalent of, we have long-acting birth control that people really like, right? You can get implants, you can get, you can get injections, and so it's a similar concept. Of like, it doesn't have to be a daily thing.
This show, the work I do, it is really started to shift where a big focus is on health equity.
Yeah.
So anything impacting that in this last session?
Yeah, absolutely. And my focus in the healthcare space, most of it, is around sexual and reproductive health.
Okay.
I chair our working group on DOBS to make sure that we are staying in front of what the folks are doing on the other parts of the country to prevent access. But as such, I do touch on some of the other healthcare spaces as well. And that focus on access to care, that focus on healthcare deserts, making sure that we are looking at every creative solution to make sure that care is available where you need it, when you need it. So, over the last couple of years, we've expanded the footprint of freestanding birthing centers to be full freestanding healthcare centers, so that people can access pre and post. They can access well woman care. They can access gender affirming care if they need to make sure that's closer to home.
Okay. And like I said, no gotcha questions.
Yeah.
But it's this issue that everybody knows something needs to be done about it, but no one sort of has a solution as to how to approach it. Mental health.
Absolutely. I have a colleague, Lindsay LaPointe, who's doing really amazing work looking at the workforce crisis. Workforce crisis.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Looking at what's happening in those behavioral healthcare spaces, talking to providers about, what are the salaries? What would a living wage really be? What are the barriers to licensure? She passed a groundbreaking bill that states are copying all around us, making it easier for social workers to access their license. There was a national study showing that the licensure test was blatantly racist.
Wow.
And so she, along with the National Association of Social Workers here in Illinois, created a workaround, and you can have work-based qualification for licensure instead of sitting down and taking a test. I'd rather be treated by somebody who did it by doing.
Done it. Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
remember, I always thought it was interesting that when the pandemic was really on, we found incredibly creative ways to boost the workforce. And I was just like, please keep this.
And we have kept a lot of it. Like, telehealth is here to stay, and that's great. We are in the process of overhauling our licensure system so that when folks, in particular in this time when we've got 40,000 patients a year coming in from around the country for reproductive health care, those physicians are coming here, those nurses are coming here. We need to make it easier for them to transfer their licenses.
I mean, I'm originally from downstate, the Metro East, but if you go to deep southern Illinois, people are coming from Arkansas, and then there are other people that are coming down here from, and it's just a flood.
It absolutely is, and as more states introduce and pass bans, we're only going to go up. Most people don't know this. Illinois is the #1 receiving state for out-of-state patients. Until May, the #2 was Florida.
Florida.
Right? But they had a 15-week ban, and they were the only place in the South that had anything available.
Because we're kind of a Midwest island, right?
Exactly. But the whole southeastern corner of the country, Florida was it.
Wow.
And when Florida went offline, we went from a prediction of 30,000. We've been sort of steady at 30. We're instantly looking at 40 and more.
Wow. Beyond healthcare, what were some of the biggies that were passed this session?
So it was an interesting year. I passed some criminal justice reform work that really looks at criminalized survivors of gender-based violence and access to justice for them. We've got Karina's Law hanging out there around removing guns from folks who've been deemed unsafe. That's still kind of simmering, if you will. That needs to come to a boil pretty quick.
Yeah, it's well, I don't even know why this is so hard.
I know. I mean, the law enforcement talks about the risks they face and the workforce challenges of picking that of collecting those weapons. To the risks, they signed up for that job, and the woman who might die as a result of it didn't.
Yeah.
So this is something we have to solve for sure. And I honestly think the budget, we continue to try to thread the needle and figure out how to make sure that we're providing care to the migrants who are being shipped here against their will. They need health care. They're coming here after going through massive trauma.
Yeah.
We're not helping anybody by pretending that not giving them care is going to make anybody better. There are natural tensions around that, and I think it's important that that's a reckoning we have to look at. Right? We've never made it a priority to house people before until people started getting shipped here.
Well,
and so I understand the pushback, because we should be able to house everybody who needs it.
Hopefully there'll be more creative solutions, and I know it was on one of our previous guests, is sort of like, okay, I want to steal this from former Mayor Emanuel. Sometimes there's opportunity in a crisis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's sort of like we've had affordable housing issues, homeless shelter issues, and maybe we should look at this as just one big problem.
Right, absolutely. And there's also a need for a little more compassion among our neighbors. We have shelter problems largely because every time you try to build an affordable housing development or a shelter,
Not in my backyard.
right, you deal with that, right? We've got that going on right now up in Rogers Park. There was a huge community meeting around a building that's going to be pretty dense. It seems maybe a little too dense, but it's also about the level of affordability that's going to be included there.
Okay. This is going to be sort of an odd veto session with the election, with the presidential election and everything. But what do you think might get done that didn't get done in veto? And then to put, put on your Swami hat, what do you think is going to be addressed in the next budget session?
So I think, in a year like this where we have a General Assembly ending, veto session itself tends to be kind of sleepy. We usually have 2 weeks of veto session. Sometimes we only cancel one of them. It's when the I call them the new kids, come down for orientation. We get a chance to get a look at what the new General Assembly is going to look like. But then we put a lot of work into the lame duck.
Actually, are there a lot of seats up, and do they expect a lot of turnover? Like
There are, I want to
incumbent
say,
dominant?
I believe there are 21 contested seats.
Okay.
In the general, and I think some of those are Democratic seats where the incumbent is leaving. Some of those are seats we're looking to flip. So it's a combination.
Okay.
I've heard predictions of us going from 78 to well into the 80s, which is mind-boggling.
Wow.
78 seems like a lot. When you talk about people not being around under Madigan, we were 62, 63, and felt like we were sitting in high clover. We had a 2-vote margin. Let's go. So this is something very different. So I think we'll see. It's not going to be like a remap year where you have 20, 30 new members. We'll have 10-ish.
Okay. Okay. What do you?
So in that lame duck session,
Yeah. Do you think
there's a lot we
really
left undone, right? Anything that was, anything that could cause an issue in an election kind of got put in a bucket, right? So, we've got Karina's Law is one of them, the gun bill. There are some bills around my natural organic reduction bill, for example, the human composting bill, which came out of our neighbors bringing it to me and asking me to introduce it. That one I expect will move after the election. So I think there's a good bit of unfinished business. We did not get prisoner review board reform done, which desperately needed. We had a young man killed in our district as a result of their.
It's right down the street from me.
Their inaction, and I was deeply disappointed that bill got stopped on the last day at the 11th hour, literally. So I think we've got a good bit to do in that window of time. It'll probably be between the 2 weeks, maybe 1 week of veto session, and 4 to 6 days of lame duck. Well, it'll be busy. There's going to be a lot.
Okay. We're nearing it in time to wrap up. But what are some bills that you're looking at introducing in the next budget session?
So, one of the things I'd like to see happen in our next budget, 2 things really. I had hoped that this year, speaking of Jaden Perkins' murder, I had hoped to establish a new fund in our budget to create emergency safety relocation money for survivors. Because had she been able to move and get out of that building, she might still be here. Or Jaden might still be here, and she might not have lost her son. So that's one thing that's going to be a very big priority for me, is making sure that we establish the tools needed for folks to get safety. If we're not going to do the work to make them safe, we have to give them the tools they need to get safe. Similarly, in recognition of the in-migration we're seeing of patients and providers from these states that have banned access to care, I want to provide a tax credit for those new residents, give them a warm handoff, a good welcome. welcome. These folks are going to be bringing their talents, their skills, their tax benefits to us, and so I think that giving them a little leg up. I talk about when I moved here from Florida, we planned for about 6 months to make sure that we had our stuff together to get here. By contrast, I had somebody roll up to my office on fumes, having left Florida the night before because they heard their parents were going to have them committed. They left with what they had and got here with what was left. So we helped them get established. So I want to make sure that we're prepared for that.
Okay. What are some things going on in the district this summer? Because we're getting close to it hitting. Like, when the kids go back to school?
Well, I'm already planning driving my kid back to Ann Arbor for college. It's true. We've already sort of shifted into, we're having the conversations in the office about the back to school supplies drive and how many kids we need to be able to provide for. And so, yeah, we're definitely sort of shifting that focus. This is a neighborhood full of amazing ways to gather. The beaches are hopping every weekend. It could be as simple as that. But also we've got some incredible weather permitting. Exactly. We had trucking on Jarvis last weekend. There's the pierogi fiesta on Jarvis Square, and we've got the best neighborhood festival in the city coming up, and that's the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest in a couple of weekends. It is totally homemade, right?
Well, I better write that down.
It's all local vendors, local restaurants, local performers, local artists. It is not your average street fair where you go to them and they all look alike. This is very much by and for Rogers Park. It's Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest.
Okay. Well, Representative Cassidy, thank you so much for appearing on Community Pulse. You will definitely not be a stranger.
Happy to be back anytime.
Invite you back.
Yeah.
And let me wrap this up. My name is Levi Moore, the Foxglove Alliance Coordinator for the Hectone Institute of Medicine. And on behalf of Hectone, the Foxglove Alliance, the Foxglove Alliance is a coalition of 16 public health care organizations in Chicago, of which the Healthcare Council of Chicago and another version of the nurses of the Hectone's Nurses of the Humanities are members. So with that, enjoy the rest of your summer, and I hope you come back and watch Community Pulse. Thank you.